battle in Alabama with just one day to go. Republicans are making a final push for Senate candidate Roy Moore. Over the weekend, President Trump recorded a robocall to urge voters to support the GOP candidate. Listen.
We need that seat. We need Roy voting for us. I'm stopping illegal immigration and crime, rebuilding a stronger military, and protecting the Second Amendment and our pro-life values. But if Alabama elects liberal Democrat Doug Jones, all of our progress will be stopped cold.
Joining us this morning is Georgia Congressman Doug Collins. Good to see you, sir. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be with you, Mary.
Is this enough for Moore to beat challenger Doug Jones? How do you see it?
Well, I think it definitely helps. I mean, the president is I think one of the things especially lost up here in the Washington, D.C. bubble is how the president actually speaks to the American voter. He especially does in Alabama and in my district and others, because he actually gets to the heart and he speaks to what they're thinking about. They're thinking about their families. They're thinking about their businesses. They're thinking about their jobs. They're thinking about America and how they want it to see. And I think he speaks directly to those voters. So I think the endorsement definitely helps. And, you know, the folks in Alabama will have that decision to make tomorrow.
So what happens if he wins? What happens then? We've been talking about the implications should Roy Moore win, that he's going to be the subject and the investigation target of tons of investigations from the Ethics Committee. Isn't that right?
Well, I think it will be. I think it'll be interesting, though, on how the Ethics Committee in the Senate actually handles that, because these being before he was ever elected to office, and, you know, these situations, which is very serious, and I take them very seriously. And, you know, and when you see the other senator, the current senator in Alabama, saying he would not vote for him, I think these are all things that have to be, because what is being accused of is very serious. We've got to take this very seriously. Sexual predators, this sexual harassment is something that we all have to take very seriously. And when people come forward, we have to respect that. I think what we're going to have to look at here is when he gets here, the Senate Ethics Committee will have an interesting quandary. Due process needs to be afforded. Nobody should not have that. But the Ethics Committee is going to have to decide how they handle these allegations from so many years ago and how they would affect his position in the Senate now.
Congressman, it's Dagan McDowell. The Wall Street Journal last week wrote that President Trump should rescind that endorsement of Roy Moore, that the RNC should do the same, because Republicans, really like yourself, are facing Democrats in the midterms and a little less than 3 years from now, where they're going to try and hang the issue of sexual harassment around the neck of every Republican, whether any man or woman has ever been accused of it. How do you see it?
Well, I think if, I agree with what's been said over there so far. If I was over there, I was supporting Mo Brooks and others who were running that race. I think there were better candidates than Roy Moore, but the people of Alabama have put him up there. As far as endorsement, I think it's something that the president has decided to do. I'm thinking it is a concern as I look ahead as part of, the House leadership over here. As we look into the midterm elections, these are issues that are going to come up. And I think the way that it was first handled when it first came out, the discussions that were there, the way that Roy Moore handled that, has left this an open issue for it to be used. What we saw last week with Al Franken and others and his resignation in the Senate, and how the Democrats are playing politics with this in the midterms, I think it's going to be a viral issue.
Let me turn to the tax bill, Congressman, because House and Senate Republicans are working to resolve differences in their tax bills, trying to get this deal done by Christmas. Where do things stand in the House right now? What can you tell us about the differences right now in these last few sticking points?
Well, I think one of the things there, Maria, that was just said so well right there is that the House and the Senate working together to work out differences. This is so unlike what's been going on in Washington, D.C. And I think not only the House leadership and Senate leadership, but the leadership of President Donald Trump actually being involved in this and wanting to see this done, I think has made a difference. Our previous administration, they could care less what went on Capitol Hill. He just wanted to do it all himself. But President Trump has been actively involved. So I think what you said there about us actually working that out is something that does not need to be lost on the American people. This is Washington working. What I see has got to happen is we've got to work out some differences, especially in the SALT issue. We've got to work out the differences that we have seen in the rates that have come up in the differences in pass-throughs and the differences in the individual rates, and how we're going to tie those all together. I think those are the kind of things that we're working on now. And it's one of my colleagues said just recently, this is the bill that we're going to get that is much better than where we're at now. And then as we go into the next year, we'll continue to work on making sure that we have the most pro-business, pro-individual tax reform that we can actually have, because we've always had energy independence. We've now had the best workers. We've got the best ideas. We've had the worst tax code. This is getting us better. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Congressman, I understand that, but does the right hand know what the left hand is doing? Because there are stories in the Journal this morning. For example, the Senate bill's marginal tax rate could top 100% for some people.
I saw that as well.
Okay, so Jagan mentioned that if you make $100, you're going to have to pay $108. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Then there's this other story that the Senate bill would require investors unloading partial stakes in a company to sell the oldest shares first, so that you get a bigger tax bill. A rule in the Senate bill could have a big impact on investors. It would require them to sell on a first-in, first-out basis, meaning if they sell partial stakes in a company, they would have to unload their oldest shares first, making a higher tax bill. Does the Senate understand the impact of some of these proposals?
Well, I think
we don't think they do.
Well, I'm beginning to believe I don't think they do either. And I've had a lot of interest from my district. I have a gentleman, Mr. Cleveland, in my district who has talked about this issue a great deal, especially the in and out. I think what we've seen here is in the rush, this goes back to a bigger picture than just tax. And we need to take a brief moment here and think about this. It is how we're putting this together under reconciliation. Because of the rules of the Senate and the way we're having to go about this, the Senate was up until the last minute basically taking requests on saying, here's how you can get my vote. Here's what I think from a Republican standpoint, tax reform was something that we could all say needs to be done. And what happened is they were trying to piece together a bill at the end. They were trying to find pay-fors in different ways. We see some of this coming up. I saw the same article this morning in the Wall Street Journal. We've talked about this in and out. I think these are the kind of things that I trust Kevin Brady, for the House Ways and Means Chairman, who is the chairman of this conference committee, to look at these things and say, guys, we need to take a look at this. We need to get this right so that the package that we present to the American people actually does what we want it to do, and that's cut the taxes and stimulate business and get growth to where we're acceptable at 3 and 4% instead of the anemic 1 to 8, 1 to 2 as we've always had.
You're right, but the truth is even on the House side, you guys are so afraid of allowing the highest earners to get any tax relief. You're jumping through hoops to try to avoid anybody who's in the millionaire range to get any tax break. Why? The top 10% of earners pay 71% of the tax. Don't you want to cut taxes on the people who actually pay taxes? I mean, let's not forget this border adjustment tax that was the genius idea coming out of the House. And then you've got the bubble rate, another genius idea, 45.6%. Don't you think that if you were to lose the majority, that's going to become the top rate, 45.6%? It's going to be your fault, not the Senate.
Well, I think these are issues that we've got to say. I believe that everyone should get a tax break. I believe that we should start from the top down.
So where is it then? But we've started with the administration. Make it happen, Congressman.
Well, that's why we're in the conference committee right now. I'm not afraid of it. There's many of us that are working with the administration, making sure the administration's priorities are part of this as well, and the things that they have talked about. I think the things that we've got to look at here, though, is we look at these individual rates, getting our business going, looking at our pass-throughs, where the majority and the bulk of the wealth are in this country. Those are the areas that we're going to see those tax rates cuts. Those are the areas that we're going to see those jobs created. That's the thing that's going to get us so that we stay in a majority and we can continue to build on what we've already started. If we continue to focus on the small things, which we need to get fixed in conference, and that's what they're doing right now, then we're going to make this plan better. We're going to move it forward, and that's going to be better for the American people. And you're going to be able to say, look at the growth that we're seeing, look at the stock market, look at the home ownership, look at the business started, look at the jobs created, and that's where we've got to focus on.
All right, we're focused on it, Congressman. We're going to be watching. We know there will be ups and downs this week. We'll see how you fix it. Congressman, good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Good to see you, too. Take care.
Doug Collins joining us there in Washington.